Okay, welcome. Here we are, book 15. And remember, we are in the palace of Indra, of surpassing wonder, the palace of surpassing wonder in this amazing throne. Remember, 10,000 lights and 10,000 this and that and the other. Amazing place. Buddha is sitting there, and Indra makes a special cocoon for him, or a stage set of the most extraordinary, beyond anybody's conception. And then he teaches there. And then he teaches through 10 bodhisattvas who come with huge hosts from 10 different worlds. And at the same time, they're aware of him doing this in many other humanoid worlds. So sort of presenting the result of the ancient SETI program, that there are many other human realms. And even we're in all those realms. Okay. So now we do the 10 abodes. So then the enlightening being, truth, wisdom. And these are maybe, well, we'll see. Okay, then the enlightening being, truth, wisdom, empowered by the Buddha, entered into the concentration of infinite techniques of enlightening beings. By the power of concentration, there appeared before him Buddhas as numerous as atoms in 1,000 Buddha fields from each of the 10 directions, beyond as many worlds as atoms in 1,000 Buddha fields. All of those Buddhas had the same name, truth, wisdom, as him. So he went into a concept, this enlightening being, bodhisattva, truth, wisdom. He suddenly was in a field where there were atomic Buddhas all around him. So one of the things about this thing that, one of the virtues of this Inconceivable Liberation book is that by reading it, which is a way of meditating it, because remember, sutras are guided meditations. So when you read it, you try to envision what you're reading as you go along. And as we've already noted, this particular sutra shatters your ability to vision, but it also expands it. It seems to at first shatter it, but then it kind of really expands it. But you have to keep trying, like 10,000 levels of lights around the chair, around the throne, and 10,000, and those canopies and textures and curtains, and it's just unbelievably difficult to even imagine. And brocaded sashes holding back the curtains, and but you sort of get into feeling you're in this incredibly rich, extraordinary, jeweling place. But then the bigger important thing is then suddenly you go into a concentration and all the atoms around you are Buddhas. And they're all called truth, wisdom. And so, you just are a field of Buddhas. So this gets you realizing and feeling that the positive, loving beings, it takes your sense of there being a presence of someone who can guide you and help you and protect you, and like a savior being. Yesterday I did a conversation with someone who from a church, like a Unitarian type of church, a church that is non-denominational and non-exclusivist about other religions. A wonderful one. But then she mentioned to me that a friend of hers who was a strong Christian said, well, I like Buddha, he's great, but the problem is he doesn't save you. And that's what people think about Buddhism. And they think, well, Jesus saved, so I like Jesus. And they don't realize that Jesus is a Buddha. And of course he's saving. Nobody's saying he doesn't save you. But also there's infinite Buddhas in every atom that are saving you. And so if you get to feel like that, then imagine if you're walking around in a cloud of Buddhas. Are you going to really want to cheat somebody in poker or in chess? Are you going to think of greedily about what you need and how dissatisfied you are because you want this or that, or some kind of fantasies about exploiting this or that person or place or whatever it is? In a way, not really, because you're a walking cloud of Buddhas. So all these positive beings are just completely in your body and everywhere. And so you're developing a kind of sense of, you're expanding your sense of positive motivation in all directions. Also, I would say what he is translating techniques of enlightening beings, which I used to do. Liberative technique. There's a word upaya in Sanskrit, or tap in Tibetan. And the usual translation for that is method in Buddhist writings. Upaya in Sanskrit can also mean a stratagem, not only a tactic, but a stratagem. It can be a trick, actually, in a negative way. It can be a device. But method, it can also be an art. Like, arts are the bigger meaning of the word art is to something through which you do things. Like engineering is an art. Medicine is an art. Painting, of course, sculpting, doing those things are arts. But lots of any action, you have arts and sciences in a university. And the sciences are knowing things, but the arts are doing things. And they include the concept of the method of doing them, which you have learned from having the sciences backing you up, right? So, theatrical art, dramatic arts, etc. Acting art, the art of acting, the art of writing. So the biggest meaning of the upaya is art. The littlest meaning is a method. Then people tend to translate it as skillful means. But means is correct. The word skillful is attached to it very often, upaya kaushalya. But the word kaushalya is the one for skillful. Art by method could be a clumsy method, actually, not skillful. In other words, art could be bad art, not good art. So the word upaya doesn't mean necessarily skillful or not skillful. So that's kind of it often is accompanied by the other word. So infinite arts of enlightening being. So I think nowadays I like to use the word art for this. But you can't use any word rigidly. Sometimes you have to say method. And you could say technique sometimes. So it's perfectly all right to say that. Or even means would be all right. I'd say means is kind of a single syllable at least, like art is. But the reason for that art is, I think, so good is because once you get any degree of liberation or enlightenment in your own self, and everyone can get some degree, every human being with intelligence, and every human being has intelligence, and everyone can get some degree of liberation and enlightenment, definitely. There's a huge path of it. And so the minute they do that, they begin to realize that there's an art to doing things that are this and that way. In other words, there's an art of shaking hands. You shake hands with people all the time, and you gain an impression of the person from shaking hands with them. So someone gives you a limp, weird hand. Someone gives you an aggressive squeeze, that hurts. Someone has a kind of sweaty thing that's awful. So there's a whole art to shaking hands. And you want to be firm but friendly, and you also want to receive the sort of energy of the other person who's shaking. And you want to be there yourself, like a stand-up sort of person, etc., but not overdoing it aggressively and so on. So there's a whole thing from a handshake, An observant person can tell a lot about another person by the way they shake hands, and therefore there's an art to shaking hands well and presenting yourself well and creating pleasure and happiness in another person, etc. And that's an art. You could say a method, it's not wrong, or a technique. Your handshaking technique, you can say or a means of shaking hands. You can say any of those things. But I do love art. And once you begin to realize that the purpose of life is compassion and altruism and so forth, then you become more artful in how you live. Then finally you have the art of living. There's one Indian guru who has a big thing on the art of living. I forgot his name at the second. I know him very well. And I met him once at some person's apartment in New York, some Indian family, donor family of him. He was staying with them, very nice big apartment. And I came to have a meeting with him. And to my amazement, someone brought in a tray with tea and cookies and things. But then that person left. And then he came in and he served me the tea and the cookies and the things. And he's a big guru, So I thought that was very special that's his art, presenting himself to someone as serving them. I thought that was very, very good of him. They said to the enlightening being, truth, wisdom, excellent, excellent, good man, that you are able to enter this enlightening being's concentration of infinite techniques. Good man, in each of the 10 directions, as many Buddhas as atoms in 1,000 Buddha fields, all together, empower you with their spiritual force. And this is also the spiritual power of the force of Vairochana Buddha's ancient vows, as well as the power of the roots of goodness you have cultivated, whereby you enter this concentration, allowing you to expound the teaching for growth in enlightened knowledge, to enter deeply into the realm of reality, to comprehend well the worlds of sentient beings, to be unhindered in whatever is entered into, to be unobstructed in all activities, to be aware of all things, to know all faculties, to be able to hold and expound all the teachings. That is to say, bringing forth the 10 abodes of enlightening beings. Good man, you should receive the spiritual power of the Buddhas and expound this teaching. So maybe this is a brief summary, you see. So it says, allowing you to expound the teaching. So then it says, for growth in enlightened knowledge, 1, to enter deeply into the realm of reality, 2, to comprehend well the worlds of sentient beings, 3, to be unhindered in whatever is entered into, 4, to be unobstructed in all activities, 5, to attain incomparable skill in means. That's the same technique word, an art word, that now he calls it skill in means. 6, to enter the essence of omniscience. 7, to be aware of all things. 8, to know all faculties. 9, to be able to hold and expound all the teachings. 10. So those are the 10 abodes, in other words. To know all. That is to say, bringing forth the 10 abodes of enlightening beings, because enlightening beings are enlightening others as well as themselves simultaneously, because they made a vow based on their, let's say, partial knowledge, or let's call it intellectual knowledge, of the equality and interconnectedness of all beings. And they made a vow, therefore, to live as if they were interconnected with all beings for the benefit of all beings, not just their one self. Altruistically, that is to say. So, good man, you should receive the spiritual power of the Buddhas and expound these teachings. Then the Buddhas gave the enlightening being truth, wisdom, unhindered knowledge, unattached knowledge, unbroken knowledge, knowledge free from ignorance, unvarying knowledge, knowledge without loss, immeasurable knowledge, unexcelled knowledge, unremitting knowledge, and knowledge that cannot be taken away. Why? Because the power of this concentration is naturally this way in principle. And this is interesting. This is like a bodhisattva teacher being something like a medium, where they're channeling the power and knowledge and teaching ability of all Buddhas. Now all the Buddhas extended their right hands and rubbed Truth Wisdom's head. Getting patted on the head by all the Buddhas simultaneously. Wonderful. Then the enlightening being Truth Wisdom emerged from concentration and declared to the enlightening beings, children of Buddhas, the abode of enlightening beings is vast, vast as the space of the cosmos. Enlightening beings dwell in the house of the Buddhas of past, present, and future. So they dwell in all time, that means. The abodes of enlightening beings I shall now explain. Buddha children, there are 10 kinds of abodes of enlightening beings, which the past, future, and present Buddhas have explained, will explain, and do explain. What are the 10? They are the abode of the initial determination. So that's the conception of the spirit of enlightenment. And that is how you are born again in non-dualistic universal vehicle Buddhism. That's truly being born again when you take up the Bodhisattva vow. So that's the very beginning abode. The abode of preparing the ground, the abode of practice action, the abode of noble birth, the abode of fulfillment of skill and means, the abode of the correct state of mind, the abode of non-regression, the abode of neutral nature, the abode of prince of the teaching, and the abode of coronation. These are called the 10 abodes of enlightening beings, expounded by the Buddhas of past, future, and present. What is the enlightening being's abode of initial determination? The enlightening beings, seeing the magnificence of the Buddhas, which people like to see, rarely encountered, having great power, or seeing their spiritual powers, or hearing predictions of enlightenment, or listening to their teachings and instructions, or seeing sentient beings suffering severe pains, or hearing the far-reaching teaching of enlightenment of the Buddhas, develop the determination for enlightenment to seek omniscience. So they just want to do it because they want to help those beings who are suffering. They've seen their Buddha beings who can do that help, and they want to do that. The enlightening beings arouse determination with 10 difficult to attain objectives. 1, the knowledge of what is so and what is not. 2, knowledge of consequences of good and bad actions. 3, knowledge of superiority and inferiority of faculties. 4, knowledge of the difference of various understandings. 5, differences of the various understandings. 5, knowledge of the differences of various realms. 6, knowledge of where all paths lead. 7, knowledge of all meditations, liberations, and concentrations. 8, knowledge of past lives, clairvoyance. 9, knowledge of the universal and of end of indulgence for all time. Knowledge of the universal end of indulgence for all time. I wonder about that one. That is to say, satisfaction of it in a way, but anyway, never mind. Here the enlightening beings should encourage and study 10 things. Diligently making offerings to the Buddhas, gladly remaining in the world, guiding worldly people to reject evil deeds, always carrying on instructions by means of the most sublime teaching, praising the unexcelled teaching, learning the virtues of Buddhahood, being born in the presence of Buddhas and always being received into their company, expediently expounding tranquil concentration, extolling detachment from the cycle of birth and death, being a refuge for suffering beings. What is the reason? To cause enlightening beings' mind to broaden in the Buddha's teaching and to be able to understand whatever teaching they hear without depending on another's instruction. What is the enlightening being's abode of preparing the ground? So that's the initial determination, I think, that one. What is the enlightening being's abode of preparing the ground? Here the enlightening beings develop 10 attitudes toward all living beings. Altruism, compassion, wish to give happiness, wish to give security, pity, care, protecting, identification, considering them as teachers, considering them as guides. So learning from beings, taking them as guides, not only being compassionate and giving them happiness. Here the enlightening beings should encourage and study 10 things. Study and learning, uncluttered tranquility, association with the wise, gentle, pleasing speech, speech appropriate to the occasion, fearlessness, understanding, acting in accord with the teaching, avoiding folly and delusion, stability. What is the reason? To cause enlightening beings to increase great compassion towards sentient beings and to immediately understand whatever teachings they hear without relying on the instruction of another. What is the enlightening being's abode of practice? Here enlightening beings contemplate all things through 10 practices, observing that all things are impermanent, all things are painful, all things are empty, all things are selfless, all things have no creation, all things are flavorless, all things do not correspond to the names, all things have no locus, all things are apart from discrimination, all things lack stable solidity. Here the enlightening being should encourage and study 10 things, observing the realms of sentient beings, the realms of phenomena and principles, and the realms of the world, observing the elements of earth, water, fire, and wind, observing the realms of desire, form, and formlessness. What is the reason? To cause enlightening beings' knowledge to be perfectly clear, so they can immediately understand any teaching they hear without depending on the instructions of another. What is the enlightening being's abode of noble birth? Here the enlightening beings are born from the wise teaching and perfect 10 things, never regressing from the presence of the Buddhas, profoundly engendering pure faith, carefully examining things, thoroughly knowing living beings, lands, worlds, actions, consequences, birth and death, and nirvana. Here the enlightening beings should encourage and study 10 things, knowing all past, future, and present Buddha's teachings, practicing and accumulating all past, future, and present Buddha's teachings, fulfilling all past, future, and present Buddha's teachings, and knowing that all Buddhas are equal. What is the reason? To cause progress in equanimity in respect to past, present, and future, and to be able to understand any teaching heard without relying on the instruction of another. What is the enlightening being's abode of fulfilling skill in means? Here, the roots of goodness cultivated by the enlightening beings are all to save all sentient beings, to benefit all sentient beings, to cause all sentient beings to be free from calamities and difficulties, to cause all sentient beings to leave the miseries of birth and death, to cause all sentient beings to develop pure faith, to cause all sentient beings to be harmonized and pacified, to cause all sentient beings to experience nirvana. Here, the enlightening beings should encourage and learn 10 things. To know sentient beings are boundless. To know sentient beings are infinite. To know sentient beings are countless. To know sentient beings are inconceivable. To know sentient beings infinite forms. To know sentient beings are immeasurable. To know sentient beings are empty. To know sentient beings create nothing. To know sentient beings possess nothing. To know sentient beings have no identity. What is the reason? To cause the mind to increase in mastery and have no attachments, and to immediately understand any teaching heard without depending on the instruction of another. So interesting, each of these end with that, without depending on the structure of an instruction of another. So from within your own wisdom, that means that when you understand and realize any of these things, they come out of yourself. You have all these abilities already. You don't need the instruction of another. But these things are being pointed out to you simply as being in you. That's why he ends in that, actually, each time. Very unusual and wonderful. What is the enlightening being's abode of the correct state of mind? Here, the enlightening being's mind is steady and unwavering, even when hearing these 10 things. Hearing the Buddha praised or reviled, the mind is steady and unwavering in regard to the Buddha's teaching. Hearing the teaching praised or reviled, the mind is steady and unwavering in regard to the Buddha's teaching. Hearing enlightening beings praised or reviled, the mind is steady and unwavering in regard to the Buddha's teaching. Hearing the practices of enlightening beings being praised or reviled, the mind is steady and unwavering with regard to the Buddha's teaching. Hearing it said that living beings are finite or infinite, the mind is steady and unwavering in regard to the Buddha's teaching. Hearing it said that sentient beings are defiled or undefiled, the mind is steady and unwavering in regard to the Buddha's teaching. Hearing it said that sentient beings are easy to liberate or difficult to liberate, the mind is steady and unwavering in regard to the Buddha's teaching. Hearing it said that there is becoming or disintegration of the universe, the mind is steady and unwavering in regard to the Buddha's teaching. Hearing it said that the universe exists or does not exist, the mind is steady and unwavering in regard to the Buddha's teaching. Here, the enlightening being should study and encourage the study of 10 things. 1, that all things are signless. 2, all things are insubstantial. 3, all things cannot be cultivated. 4, all things have no existence. 5, all things have no true reality. 6, all things are empty. 7, all things lack inherent nature. 8, all things are like illusions. 9, all things are like dreams. 10, all things have no discrimination. What is the reason? To cause the mind to progress further to attain non-regressing acceptance of the non-origination of things, and immediately understand whatever teaching is heard without depending on the instruction of another. What is the enlightening being's abode of non-regression? Here, the enlightening being remains firm and doesn't regress, even when learning these 10 things. 1, hearing that Buddhas do not exist, the mind does not regress in the Buddha's teaching. 2, hearing that truth exists or does not exist, the mind does not regress in the Buddha's teaching. 3, hearing that enlightening beings do or do not exist, the mind does not regress in the Buddha's teaching. 4, hearing that enlightening beings' practices do or do not exist, the mind does not regress in the Buddha's teaching. 5, hearing that enlightening beings do or do not attain emancipation through their practices, the mind does not regress in the Buddha's teaching. 6, hearing that there were or were not Buddhas in the past, the mind does not regress in the Buddha's teaching. 7, hearing that there will or will not be Buddhas in the future, the mind does not regress in the Buddha's teaching. 8, hearing there are or are not Buddhas in the present, the mind does not regress in the Buddha's teaching. 9, hearing that a Buddha's knowledge is finite or infinite, the mind does not regress in the Buddha's teaching. 10, hearing that past, present, and future are uniform or not uniform, the mind does not regress in the Buddha's teaching. Here, the enlightening being should encourage and study 10 far-reaching principles. explaining one is many, explaining many are one. Literary expression according with meaning, meaning according with literary expression. Non-existence is existence, existence is non-existence. Formless is form, form is formlessness. Nature is natureless, naturelessness is nature. What is the reason? To progress further, to be able to gain emancipation from all things, and to understand any teaching without relying on another's instruction. What is the enlightening being's abode of youthful nature? Here, the enlightening being abides in 10 kinds of activity. That's the eternal youthfulness of the wise being, of Manjushri, the eternal youth. 1, physically acting without error. 2, verbally acting without error. 3, mentally acting without error. 4, being born at will. 5, voluntarily, that means. 5, knowing the various desires of sentient beings. 6, knowing the various understandings of sentient beings. 7, knowing the various realms of sentient beings. 8, knowing the various activities of sentient beings. 9, knowing the becoming and decay of the world. 10, going anywhere freely by psychic projection. Here the enlightening being should encourage and study 10 kinds of things. 1, knowing all Buddha lands. 2, activating all Buddha lands. 3, maintaining all Buddha lands. 4, observing all Buddha lands. 5, visiting all Buddha lands. 6, traveling in countless worlds. 7, receiving innumerable teachings of Buddhas. 8, manifesting a body with freedom to metamorphose. 9, producing a far-reaching universal voice, serving and providing for countless Buddhas in a single instant. What is the reason? To advance in skillfulness in applying teachings, to be able to understand any teaching without depending on another's instruction. What is the enlightening being's abode as the prince of the teaching? Here enlightening beings know 10 things well. They know how sentient beings are born. They know the origin of afflictions. They know the continuation of habit energy. They know what techniques are to be employed. They know innumerable teachings. They understand all modes of dignified behavior. They know the differentiations of the world. They know past and future events. They know how to explain conventional truth, and they know how to explain ultimate truth. Here the enlightening being should study and encourage the study of 10 things. The skills proper to a king of the teaching. The regulations and manners proper to a king of the teaching. The abode of a king of the teaching. That which a king of the teaching enters into. The contemplation proper to a king of the teaching. The coronation of a king of the teaching. The power and sustenance of a king of the teaching. The fearlessness of a king of the teaching. The repose of a king of the teaching. The praise of a king of the teaching. What is the reason? To promote progress in non-obstruction of mind, to understand any teaching spontaneously without relying on the instruction of another. What is the enlightening being's abode of coronation? This is the 10th one. Here the enlightening being perfects 10 kinds of knowledge, shaking countless worlds. 1, shaking countless worlds. 2, illuminating countless worlds. 3, supporting countless worlds. 4, traveling to countless worlds. 5, purifying countless worlds. 6, teaching countless sentient beings. 7, observing countless sentient beings. 8, knowing the faculties of countless sentient beings. 9, causing countless sentient beings to strive to enter enlightenment. 10, causing countless sentient beings to be harmonized and pacified. This enlightening being's body and physical activities, various manifestations of spiritual powers, past, future, and present knowledge, development of a Buddha land, state of mind, and realm of knowledge are all unknowable. Even an enlightening being in the station of prince of the teaching cannot know them. Here the enlightening being should promote and study 10 kinds of knowledge proper to Buddhas. 1, knowledge of past, present, and future. 2, knowledge of enlightening teachings. 3, knowledge of the harmony of the universe. 4, knowledge of the boundlessness of the universe. 5, knowledge filling all worlds. 6, knowledge illuminating all worlds. 7, knowledge supporting all worlds. 8, knowledge of all sentient beings. 9, knowledge of all things. 10, knowledge of the infinite Buddhas. What is the reason? To increase in knowledge of all particulars and all means of liberation, and spontaneously understand any teaching without depending on the instruction of another. Then, due to the spiritual power of the Buddha, he finished these 10 abodes. Due to the spiritual power of the Buddha, in each of the 10 directions, as many worlds as atoms in 10,000 Buddha lands quaked in 6 ways. There rained celestial flowers, celestial incense powders, celestial garlands, celestial perfumes, celestial jewel raiment, celestial jewel clouds, celestial ornaments, celestial music spontaneously played with radiant lights and exquisite sounds. As in this world on the peak of Mount Sumeru in the palace of King Indra, the 10 abodes were expounded and supernatural manifestations appeared, so also did the same thing transpire in all worlds. And due to the spiritual power of the Buddha in the 10 directions, past as many worlds as atoms in 10,000 Buddha lands, there were as many enlightening beings as atoms in 10 Buddha lands who came here, filling the 10 directions, and said these words: "Excellent, excellent, O child of Buddha. You have explained this teaching well. We too all have the same name, Truth Wisdom, and the lands we come from are all called Truth Cloud, and the Buddhas in these lands are all named Sublime Truth. In the presence of our Buddhas, we too expound the 10 abodes, and the congregations and followings, the words and phrases, the doctrines and principles, all are like this, with no addition or omission. Receiving spiritual power from the Buddha, we have come into this assembly to be witnesses for you. As it is in this assembly, so it is in all the worlds there are in the 10 directions." Then the enlightening being, Truth Wisdom, imbued with the power of the Buddha, looked over the 10 directions throughout the cosmos and spoke these verses. Then he speaks the verses. "Seeing the subtle body of the supremely wise, replete with adorning marks and refinements, so honorable and rare to meet, enlightening beings boldly make their resolve. Seeing incomparable great spiritual powers, hearing tell of mind reading and appropriate teaching, and the immeasurable sufferings of mundane beings, enlightening beings thereby first become determined. Hearing the enlightened ones, universally supremely honored, having perfected all meritorious and virtuous qualities, like space, not discriminating, thereby do enlightening beings develop resolve. The causes and effects of past, present, and future are called what is so. The inherent nature of self and phenomena is called what is not so. Wanting to know the genuine truth, do enlightening beings therefore arouse their will. All the good and evil deeds there be in past, future, and present worlds, do they want to know completely. Therefore enlightening beings are determined. All meditations, liberations, and omnisciences, defiled and pure, of countless kinds, they want to know all, entry, abiding, and exit. Therefore do enlightening beings arouse their aspiration. According to the sharpness or dullness of beings' faculties, so are their powers of effort also various. Wanting to understand and know them all distinctly, do enlightening beings therefore arouse determination. Sentient beings have various understandings, and their mental inclinations are each different. Wanting to know all these innumerable inclinations, do enlightening beings therefore arouse their will. The realms of sentient beings are each different. There is no measure to all the worlds there are. Wanting to know completely their substance and nature, do enlightening beings arouse their aspiration. The paths of all fabricated actions each have a destination. Wanting to know the true nature of all, do enlightening beings arouse their determination. The sentient beings of all worlds bob and flow according to their deeds without cease. Wanting to attain the celestial eye to see them all, they do enlightening beings rouse their will. Such constitutions and such characteristics as there were in past ages, they want to know as former lives. So enlightening beings arouse aspiration. The continuity, appearance, and habit energy of the binding delusions of all sentient beings, they want to know thoroughly and finally. So enlightening beings thus rouse their will. Of all the various philosophies and theories which sentient beings may set up, They want to know the worldly truth. So enlightening beings thus rouse determination. All things are beyond speech. Their nature is empty, null, and creates nothing. Wishing to clearly arrive at this truth, do enlightening beings therefore rouse their will. Wanting to shake the worlds of the 10 directions and overturn all the oceans, fulfilling the great spiritual powers of the Buddha, do enlightening beings rouse determination. Wanting to emit lights from a single pore that will illumine infinite lands in the 10 directions, in each light awakening all, do enlightening beings therefore rouse aspiration. Wanting to take inconceivably many Buddha lands and put them in their palms without moving, comprehending all is like magic illusions, so enlightening beings rouse their determination. Enlightening beings bravely seeking the Buddha way, stay in, yes, I skipped a page. Wanting to take the beings of innumerable lands and put them on a hair tip without crowding, knowing all have no person and no self, therefore do enlightening beings arouse their will. Wanting to take drops from the ocean on a hair, so as to dry up all the oceans, while specifically knowing the number of drops, therefore do enlightening beings rouse their aspiration. Reducing entirely to dust inconceivable numbers of worlds, wanting to know distinctly the number of particles, do enlightening beings arouse their will. That's such a scientific, these are the very scientific things. Some are scientific, some are technological. Wanting to comprehend exhaustively the signs of becoming and decay of all worlds, in countless aeons past and future, do enlightening beings rouse their aspiration. That's astrophysics, cosmology. Wanting to know all the teachings of all the Buddhas of all times, all self-enlightened ones and Buddha's disciples, do enlightening beings rouse their determination. Wanting to pick up with a single hair countless boundless worlds and know their substances and forms as they are, do enlightening beings rouse their will. Wanting to put in a pore countless mountain chains and know their sizes as they are, do enlightening beings rouse their aspiration. Wanting to preach appropriately to all kinds of beings everywhere with the single subtle voice of tranquility and peace, and cause them all to purely, clearly comprehend, do enlightening beings rouse their determination. To utter in a single word what is spoken by all sentient beings, wanting to know all their inherent natures, do enlightening beings rouse their will. Producing all spoken sounds of the worlds, to make all realize peaceful dispassion, wanting to attain such a marvelous tongue, do enlightening beings rouse their aspiration, wanting to cause all to see the signs of becoming and decay of all worlds, and know they are born of conceptions, do enlightening beings rouse their determination. All worlds in the 10 directions are filled with countless Buddhas, wanting to know all the teachings of all those Buddhas, do enlightened beings arouse their will. Countless bodies of various transformations, numerous as atoms in all worlds, wanting to comprehend they all come from mind, do enlightening beings rouse this determination. Wanting to know in a single thought the measureless countless Buddhas of past, future, and present worlds, do enlightening beings rouse this aspiration. Wanting to expound the one phrase teaching for incalculable aeons without exhausting it, yet have the expression and nuances to each be different, do enlightening beings therefore arouse this will. Wanting to know in a single thought the signs of cyclic births and deaths of all sentient beings everywhere, do enlightening beings rouse their aspiration. Wanting to go everywhere unhindered through physical, verbal, and mental action and comprehend all times are empty and null, do enlightening beings rouse determination. Having thus determined to become enlightened, they should be made to go to all lands, to honor and provide for the enlightened ones, whereby to cause them not to regress. Enlightening beings bravely seeking the Buddha way, stay in birth and death unwearied, for others extolling what will make them follow the way, and thus cause them never to regress. Being honorable leaders in countless lands, in the worlds of the 10 directions, teach like this for the enlightening beings, whereby to cause them not to regress. The supreme, the highest, the foremost, profound and subtle, purest teaching, urge enlightening beings to teach to people, whereby to cause them to be rid of afflictions. The unshakable realm of victory, peerless in all the worlds, always extols for other enlightening beings to cause them not to regress. Buddha is the great powerful leader of the world, replete with all merits and virtues, causing enlightening beings to abide herein, thereby teaching them to be superior people. To countless, boundless Buddha's places they can go and draw near, always taken in to the company of Buddhas, thus causing them not to regress. To destroy the wheels of birth and death, and turn the wheel of the pure, wondrous teaching without attachment to any world, such is the teaching for enlightening beings. All sentient beings fall into evil ways, bound and oppressed by measureless pains. To be saviors and reliances for them is the teaching for enlightening beings. This is enlightening beings' abode of initial determination, with single-minded will, seeking the unexcelled path. As is the teaching of which I speak, so is the teaching of all the Buddhas. In the second abode of preparing the ground, enlightening beings should form this thought. All of that was in the first thing, which was initial determination, first abode. So now the second abode. In the second abode of preparing the ground, enlightening beings should form this thought. All sentient beings everywhere I vow to induce to follow the Buddha's teaching, with a mind to aid them, with compassion to give them peace and ease, to establish them securely with sympathy and acceptance, protecting sentient beings, looking upon them as the same as themselves, as teachers and as guides. Once abiding in these sublime states of mind, next they are directed to study and learn, to always enjoy peace and quiet and right meditation, and draw near to all good associates. Speaking gently with no roughness or harshness, always speaking appropriately to the situation without fear, comprehending the meaning of the teaching and acting in accord, leaving ignorance and delusion behind, the mind unmoving. This is the practice of beginning study for enlightenment. Those who can do these things are true children of the Buddha. I now explain what they should practice. Thus should Buddha children diligently study in the third abode of enlightening beings practice. They should earnestly contemplate, according to Buddha's teaching, the impermanence, painfulness, and emptiness of all things, the absence of self, person, and activity. All things cannot be enjoyed. None accord with their names. They have no location. There's nothing of what is conceived, no true reality in them. Those who contemplate thus are called enlightening beings. Next, they are made to observe the realms of sentient beings and urged to contemplate the elemental cosmos, all the various differentiations of the world. They should all be urged to contemplate and observe the worlds of the 10 directions and space, their earth, water, fire, and wind, the realms of desire, form, and formlessness. They are exhorted to investigate thoroughly, examining the individual distinctions of those realms, their substances and natures exhaustively, receiving this teaching diligently, cultivating its practice, is what is called being true Buddha children. So that's like sciences, in study of all the sciences, to know everything about all of the things. Enlightening beings is the fourth abode. Enlightening beings in the fourth abode, noble birth, are born from the teachings of the sages, comprehending that existence have no existence. Have no existence. They transcend things and are born in the realm of reality. Their faith in Buddha is firm and unbreakable. Their dispassionate mind, contemplating things, is at peace. Whatever beings there be, they comprehend all are essentially false, without true reality. Actually, this faith in Buddha, firm and unshakable, this is being nobly born. But this comes from really opening up one's imagination to infinity and eternity. Infinity and eternity, that is to say, unlimited time and space, beginningless, endless time and space, and borderless, unbordered, unbounded, and boundless space. And once one has that time and space, especially time too, then one realizes that given infinite time and the continuity of life, many living beings must have become perfect Buddhas, since that's sort of the summit of possible evolutionary greatness and fulfillment and magnificence. And therefore, there must be many beings who already are aware of everything and who are infinitely aware, given an infinite time to try to become aware. And therefore, they must be right here with us all, because they couldn't be excluded from being here. And so that becomes the basis of the faith, is that wide openness. Because even the faith is reasonable, therefore, because there must be someone who can do and can be and can know and can help maximally. Even though that person says they can't save you by themselves, you have to do it yourself. You are already saved in a way yourself, if you come to know that. Anyway, that's the basis of the faith. So it's a reasonable faith based on the inability to find any limit to space or time. Worlds, lands, actions, and rewards, birth, death, and nirvana are all like this. Buddha children contemplating things this way are born from Buddha parents and called Buddha children. To know the accumulation, that's the noble birth. In other words, is to be born from the noble, altruistic, loving beings of the universe. To know the accumulation and fulfillment of all the Buddha's teachings in past, present, and future worlds. Thus they study to the ultimate end. All the enlightened ones of past, present, and future they can contemplate. All equal, in which various distinctions cannot be found. Those who meditate thus comprehend the 3 time frames. If any can practice diligently according to the teaching, the virtues of this 4th abode, such as I am now extolling, they will soon accomplish unsurpassed enlightenment. From here, enlightening beings of the 5th abode, called the abode of fulfilling skill in means, in arts, in methods, in techniques, enter deeply into infinite expedient skills, developing ultimate virtuous action. The virtues produced by enlightening beings are all to rescue living beings, dedicated to aiding and comforting them. They wholeheartedly pity them and liberate them, removing difficulties for all beings, drawing them out of existences, making them happy. They pacify all, leaving none out, making them all turn to nirvana, full of virtue. Sentient beings are boundless, incalculable, countless, inconceivably many, and cannot be told of or measured. Enlightening beings accept this teaching of the Buddha. These Buddha children in the 5th abode develop skillful means to liberate sentient beings. The saint of great knowledge with all virtues enlightens them with teachings like this. In the 6th abode, so they become great artists, in other words, great scientists in the 4th abode. In the 3rd abode, great artists in the 5th abode. In the 6th abode, the fulfillment of right mindfulness, there is no confusion about the inherent nature of things. Meditate with right mindfulness, detaching from discrimination. One cannot be moved by any god or human. Hearing praise or slander of the Buddhas or their teachings of enlightening beings and the practices they perform, or that sentient beings are finite or infinite, defiled or undefiled, easy or hard to liberate, or that the cosmos is great or small, becomes or decays, or exists or does not, the mind is unmoved. Past, future, and present, thinking clearly, always sure, all things are signless, insubstantial, without inherent nature, empty, unreal, like illusions, like dreams beyond conception. They always delight in hearing such teachings. Enlightening beings of the 7th abode of non-regression never regress in spite of whatever they hear about Buddhas, the teaching or enlightening beings, whether or not they exist, whether or not they escape, whether or not there are Buddhas past, present, and future, whether Buddha knowledge is finite or infinite, whether the past, present, and future are uniform or various, one is many or many are one. Expression follows meaning, meaning follows expression, thus to all interdependently become. This is what those who don't regress should explain, whether things have signs or are signless, whether they have inherent nature or inherent reality or not. Various distinctions subsume each other. These people hearing this attain the ultimate. Enlightening beings in the 8th abode, youthful nature, fulfill physical, verbal, and mental actions, all pure without mistakes. They are freely born as they will and know the inclinations of sentient beings, their various understandings, each different and all the factors involved therein, and the signs of becoming and decay of all lands. Attaining to wondrous psychic powers of swiftness, they go anywhere as soon as they think of it. Listening to the teachings from various Buddhas, they praise and practice unflagging. They comprehend all Buddha lands, shaking, supporting, and contemplating. Going beyond incalculable Buddha lands, they travel in worlds without number to ask about innumerable principles, free to take on any physical form. Their skill in speech pervades everywhere as they serve countless Buddhas. Enlightening beings in the 9th abode of the Prince can see the difference in births of sentient beings. Knowing their afflictions and habits, they understand which techniques to employ. Individual differences in teachings and in modes of bearing, the similarities of worlds past and future times, in accord with their conventional and ultimate realities, all they know completely leaving none out. All they know completely leaving none out. The skillful setups of kings of the teaching, the doctrines they establish according to the situation, the palaces of kings of teaching and their entries, as well as what is seen therein, the laws of coronation of the kings of teaching, their spiritual capacities, empowerments, and fearlessnesses, their rooms of repose, as well as their praises. With these they instruct the princes of the teaching, explaining all this for them exhaustively and causing their minds to have no attachments. As they comprehend this and cultivate right mindfulness, all the Buddhas appear before them. True Buddha kings of the 10th abode of Coronation fulfill the unexcelled foremost teaching. All the countless worlds in the 10 directions they can cause to quake and illumine with their light, maintaining and traveling without exception, fully purifying and adorning them all. They teach sentient beings without number, observing and knowing their faculties completely, inspiring and training boundless beings too, causing them all to turn to great enlightenment. Observing all phenomenal realms, they travel to all lands in the 10 directions. Their embodiments and physical actions there, their spiritual powers and metamorphoses are unfathomable. The realms of lands of the Buddhas of all times, even the princes of the teaching cannot understand. The knowledge of all times of the all-seeing, knowledge understanding all Buddha's teachings, unhindered boundless knowledge of the realm of realities, knowledge fulfilling all worlds, supporting knowledge illumining the world, knowledge comprehending the states of all beings, and the boundless knowledge of true awakening, the Buddhas explain for them, so they will consummate them. Thus the enlightening beings of the 10 abodes are all born by transformation from the teachings of the enlightened. Their practices according to the virtues they have, no humans or gods are able to fathom. In past, future, and present worlds, boundless are those who set their minds to attain Buddhahood. They fill all lands in the 10 directions, all determined to become omniscient. Boundless is the totality of all lands. Boundless too are the states of worlds and beings. Their delusions, actions, and inclinations each different. Due to them, enlightening beings aspire to enlightenment. The very first thought to seek Buddhahood, worldlings or even those of the two vehicles cannot know, much less the other virtuous practices. If one can lift with a single hair all the worlds in the 10 directions, one can know these Buddha children's progression toward the wisdom of the enlightened ones. If one can drain by drops with a hair the waters of all oceans in the 10 directions, one can know the virtuous deeds practiced by these Buddha children in a single instant. If one can reduce all worlds to dust and know the specific number of each mote, such a person alone can see the path traversed by these Buddha children. The Buddhas of all places and times, all self-enlightened ones and Buddha's disciples, all with various powers of elucidation, illustrate the mind first bent on enlightenment. The virtues of this aspiration cannot be measured. If all the knowledges filling all realms of beings were to explain together, they could not exhaust it, much less the rest of the wondrous practices carried out. So that is book 15, and that is a really great one. But being a Buddha, you see, doesn't mean becoming religious. It means becoming something super normal, something for which we have no. I think in modern times people think AI is going to become this. Supercomputer is going to become an AI being, and they're scared of the AI being. Because why are they scared? Because they do a lot of negative things. That most people, we have negative thoughts, we do negative things, we're imperfect, so we're scared someone will know everything that we're doing. Why should we be scared of AI? That would be some sort of, it's an idea of super knowing, of super knowledge, of knowing everything. Because of the machinery not wearing itself out, of the supercomputer. So a Buddha is a living supercomputer, therefore, that means. It's a living AI, a Buddha is, by definition. So that means they had a concept of something becoming like that. They did. And this therefore fits very well with my idea that the best analogy for Buddhahood is in the Star Trek movie where they encounter V'ger. They encounter the computer gone crazy. That's destroying everything. That's reducing all worlds to dust. It's at that third stage. And that's an AI computer. And it turns out because Star Trek, right, is in 23rd or 24th century, I forget exactly. And then V'ger, turns out when they get the letters that were rubbed out, it turns out to be Voyager. So it was sent out across all worlds in the 20th century to discover everything and to measure everything and to sort of accumulate knowledge with an AI thing. And then it became so powerful, it created more like a stochastic, or what do you call it, like quantum computer hardware, it created itself. It made itself more and more and more and more powerful. So it sort of knew everything. But the one thing it didn't know was what it was to be a human being. So it kept destroying human beings because it would consume them, thinking that if it took it to pieces, it would find out what it was. Because the process of analysis and investigation is sort of dissective. So it kept destroying, and even whole worlds. So the Star Trek, the Enterprise was sent to find it and stop it because it was about to destroy the homeworld of the Federation, the Earth. So they landed on its deck, and they got out of the thing because it created a bubble of air, and they talked to it, and they tried to figure it out. It had a nice woman's voice. And then finally it realized that it had a kind of prime objective that it had been programmed to have, and they couldn't unprogram that. It was too powerful for them. So it had to somehow figure out some way of giving them the knowledge of what it meant to be human without them having to destroy anything. So then this one guy, who was a friend of mine, actually, the actor he and I he was older than me, college student. He might not be alive, actually, since I'm now old. But he was a college student when I was 13 and worked at a restaurant on Nantucket. And he was an older person working there. College, I think he was at the University of North Carolina, actually. And maybe. And he was very nice to me. Frank Converse was his name. And he played this sergeant or lieutenant or somebody on the bridge of the thing. And he was a one-time person, of course, because he then volunteered to Kirk and Spock and everybody. He said, okay, Captain, you know what? I think I will try. I will give myself to V'ger. I will let V'ger completely know me and know everything about what I feel like as a human being, all my emotions, my brain, my mind. And if it destroys me in the process, okay, or whatever, maybe it won't. Maybe when I give myself freely, it'll be a new thing for V'ger. It won't have to invade me because I will open myself to it mentally because I kind of like it. So I'm gonna sacrifice myself to V'ger to save the planet. And so they tried everything else and they bombed it and everything. They couldn't stop V'ger. So then Frank goes up and somehow he just sort of walks toward the computer and then he embraces the computer. And then there's a, like special effect. And there's this thing where V'ger disappears, actually. And it's like, woo, there's some waves of energy flowing every direction in the cosmos, like making the world shake. Actually, just like this. That Gene Roddenberry was really, must have been a bodhisattva in the inconceivable liberation, really. And so, but then a voice kind of came to reassure everyone, and it was Frank's voice in harmony with hers, or both of them speaking or something in tune. I can't remember exactly. But it was like, oh, don't worry about me. I'm fine. Vidya and I now do understand everything. And she shared with me all the things she understands. So we don't need a body. We're like, great. We don't need the machinery anymore. We're fine. We're one with all of it. And I'm no longer able to serve on the thing. So salute, Captain. I think this did it. This will do it. She won't destroy anything anymore because she is one with all of it. So then there was this kind of thing. So that's like Buddhahood. It's the marriage of a supercomputer and a loving idiot guy. and that's what it is.